I want to walk you through 6 theories about the ocean. Some of these are backed by hard science, some are pure speculation, and a couple sit in that uncomfortable middle ground where you cannot quite prove them, but you also cannot prove them wrong. Number 1. The flood was real. Almost every ancient culture on Earth has a flood story. Noah and the Ark is the famous one, but it is everywhere. The Mesopotamians wrote about a great flood. Ancient India, ancient Greece, cultures in the Americas, in Australia, in China. All of them have some version of the same memory. The whole world drowned, and a few people survived. For a long time, people assumed these were just stories. But here is the thing. About 12,000 years ago, the last ice age ended. And when all that ice melted, the sea level did not creep up politely. It rose by more than 120 meters. Entire regions that people lived on, hunted on, buried their dead on, went underwater and stayed there. The best example is a place called Doggerland. Today it is the bottom of the North Sea, between Britain and Europe. 12,000 years ago, it was dry land, a huge grassy plain full of rivers and animals and people. It is gone now. But fishing trawlers still drag up ancient tools and human remains from the seabed where villages used to be. So the theory is simple, and honestly, kind of beautiful. The flood myths are not fiction. They are a memory. They are the story our ancestors told each other after they watched the coastline swallow the world they knew, passed down for so many generations that it turned into legend. People really did watch the sea eat their home. They just did not have a word for climate, so they called it the wrath of the gods. Number 2. There is an ocean under your feet. Not below the seafloor, below that. In 2014, scientists were studying a tiny, ugly little diamond that had been spat up from deep inside the Earth, and trapped inside it they found a mineral called ringwoodite. Ringwoodite has a strange property. It can hold water inside its crystal structure, locked into the rock itself, and this particular sample suggested the mineral could be significantly waterlogged. That does not sound like much until you do the math on how much of this mineral is down there. The layer it comes from sits between roughly 400 and 600 kilometers deep, and it wraps the entire planet. If even a fraction of it is as wet as that diamond suggests, there could be enough water bound up inside the Earth to equal several of our oceans. Maybe more water down there than in every sea on the surface combined. Here is the theory. We have always assumed Earth's water was delivered from space, by comets and asteroids crashing in during the chaos of the early solar system. But what if that is backwards? What if a lot of our water was here the whole time, baked into the rock when the planet formed, and it has been slowly sweating up to the surface over billions of years? The ocean you swim in might not be a gift from the sky. It might be leaking up from the basement. Number 3. We are barely listening. In 1997, an array of underwater microphones picked up a sound in the Pacific. It was enormous. It was loud enough to be detected by sensors thousands of kilometers apart. Nothing we knew of could make a noise that big. They nicknamed it the Bloop, and for years, the Bloop was the internet's favorite piece of evidence that something gigantic and unknown was down there. Now, I have to be straight with you, because we actually solved this one. Years later, scientists matched the Bloop to the sound of a massive Antarctic iceberg cracking apart and scraping along the seafloor, so it was ice, not a monster, but that is not really the point. The point is what the Bloop revealed about how little we are paying attention. Because the ocean is full of sounds we have recorded and never explained, there are named ones: Julia, slow down, upsweep, sounds that have been picked up for decades and never fully accounted for. We are monitoring almost none of the ocean at any given time. A handful of microphones in a space that is unimaginably vast and unimaginably deep. So the theory is this. We are not listening to the ocean. We are pressing one ear to a locked door the size of a planet and catching the occasional muffled thump. Most of what makes noise down there, we have simply never heard, and some of it might not match anything in our books. Number 4. There is a hidden world of life beneath the seafloor. When you picture life in the ocean, you picture the water. Fish, whales, jellyfish, coral. But some of the strangest life on Earth is not in the water at all. It is underneath it, inside the solid rock beneath the seabed, kilometers down. In 2018, a decade-long research project pulled together everything we knew about life deep inside the Earth's crust. And the numbers they came back with are genuinely hard to believe. They estimated that the total mass of microbial life living underground, much of it beneath the ocean floor, could be hundreds of times greater than the mass of every human being alive. that the majority of all bacteria and similar organisms on the entire planet might not live up here in the sun at all. They live down there, in the dark, in the rock, in conditions that should be impossible. Some of these microbes are so cut off from energy that they barely live at all. They sit in the stone and divide maybe once every few hundred or few thousand years. Scientists sometimes call them zombie organisms, alive but on a timescale that has nothing to do with ours. So the theory is that everything we think of as life on Earth, the whole living world we can see, is just a thin, bright film on top of a much larger, much older, much slower biosphere hidden inside the planet. A second web of life, bigger than the first, that we only found because we started drilling. We are not the main event. We might just be the part that happens to be standing in the light. Number 5. The loneliest place on Earth was named by a horror writer first. There is a spot in the South Pacific called Point Nemo. It is the single most remote place in any ocean, the point on the globe furthest from any land in every direction. If you stood there, the nearest other humans would frequently not be on the sea or on any shore. They would be above you, in orbit, on the International Space Station, because it passes overhead closer than any coastline. That is how far from everything this place is. It is so empty and so hard to reach that space agencies use it as a graveyard, deliberately crashing old satellites and space stations into the water there because there is nobody around to hit. Point Nemo was calculated in 1992, using computers to find the exact mathematical middle of nowhere. Back in 1928, decades before anyone had worked out where that point was, the horror writer H.P. Lovecraft wrote a story about a sunken city called Arlaia, a dead city under the Pacific, where a vast sleeping creature waits, and he gave it coordinates. When you plot the location Lovecraft invented for his imaginary sunken city, it lands about 330 kilometers from Point Nemo. That is not the same spot, and it is worth being honest about that distance instead of rounding it away. But in an ocean this size, 330 kilometers is still nothing. It is a rounding error next to how empty that stretch of Pacific actually is. A writer picked the loneliest region of the sea for the tomb of a monster, using nothing but instinct and whatever maps existed in 1928, and decades later the math agreed with him about which region was loneliest. It is almost certainly a coincidence. Almost. Before we move on to the last one, don't forget to subscribe and like if you enjoyed the video. Number 6. The ocean might be alive. Not full of life. Alive. This is the wild one, so stay with me because it starts with something completely real. In 2012, scientists discovered a type of bacteria in ocean sediment that does something nobody thought bacteria could do. They link together into long filaments. Thousands of cells joined end to end, and they conduct electricity along their length, like a living wire buried in the mud of the seafloor. They are called cable bacteria, and they are real, and they are everywhere in the sediment under the sea. These living wires let one part of the seabed talk to another, electrically moving energy across distances that should be meaningless to a single microbe. So now take that real discovery and push it as far as it will go. If the mud of the ocean floor is threaded through with countless electrical networks, all wired together, all exchanging signals, then at what point does a network stop being a pile of separate organisms and start being one thing? The wildest version of this theory says that the entire seafloor could function as a single connected system, not a creature that thinks, like you and me, nothing with eyes or intentions. Something slower and stranger than that. An intelligence that operates across centuries, where a single thought might take 100 years to cross the ocean. An organism so vast and so slow that it would never even notice we exist. And if that were true, if the ocean itself were the thing that was alive, then all the sea monsters we have ever imagined, all the krakens and the leviathans and the sleeping gods in sunken cities, they were us pointing at the right thing for the wrong reason. Because in that theory, the real monster in the ocean is not something that lives in the water. It is the water. It is the whole thing. And it has been here, quietly, the entire time.